Welcome, everyone. As always, I'm excited and delighted to be here and have a special guest this evening. I've been giving a little promo here and there so that you join us and enjoy this evening. Now, if you're wondering why on earth I'm having someone come on with mindful masculinity when normally I'm working psychically, because this gentleman not only knows about men, but he knows about mindfulness. He knows about intuition. He's worked with some of the biggies. His short list includes names that, if I mentioned, well, for one, we don't have that much time, and for two, you'd go, really? That's so cool. But without further ado, I will share that Scott Grace, and I have to ask him about his name when he comes on as well, is somebody who you want to know about. He's got this marvelous book out now called, and I'm going to show you the cover here. Let's see if we can get that in there. It's backwards, but you can see it, Mindful Masculinity, and it's even got a hot guy on the front, so that's a plus. I love the chapters. I love how it's put together. I want to share with you that Scott is a comedian, not just for this evening, but that is part of his nature. And he's actually opened for people such as Robin Williams. So just to give you an idea of the caliber of person we're dealing with and talking to this evening. And the fun part about this is this book is not a difficult book. And I'm sharing this because I know how busy everybody is today. And they're like, well, I love to read, but the book is broken into chapters. And the chapters themselves are just like so fun. When you take a look at just the title, there's one here that I was trying to get a hold of. There is one that has the F word in it, but the F word isn't fully spelled out. But for instance, My Cave, My Rules. So without further ado, Scott Grace. Hi, how are you?
Hey, oh, I'm great. What after an introduction like that, I can throw in my antidepressants.
Okay, I'm glad to hear it. So tell me, is Grace your last name for real?
Absolutely, it's legal. I changed it from Calixtine to Grace in 2010 when my partner and I, in 2008, named our daughter Asia Grace,
Ooh, beautiful.
and the last name that she was going to own. And then I decided, no, I'm a Grace too. So
That's
here I
fabulous.
am. Here I am.
Well, I shared a little bit real quick, but I also know that you have done coaching for many years. I know, like myself, you're an avid student, and no matter the age, you're always learning, you're always growing. I know that you've done coaching. I know that you have been a very busy boy, and this is your fourth book. So tell me,
But you don't know,
pardon?
you don't know
I don't
that I
know.
went to school for psychic training, and I absolutely love the right side of my brain, probably more than my left side.
Well, they're both important, as you know. That left side has to do with our linear, and the right side has to do with that abstract and the intuition and the flow. Exactly, flow. And when they're together, that's amazing. And I know there's a part in the book that you talk about meditation. And I'm always saying to everyone that meditation doesn't have to be similar to what the guru on the hill does. You know, you don't have to sit there for an hour a day being still, doing nothing. And there's so many different types of meditation. I like the fact that you make reference to meditation in your book and how it is so helpful to get into that flow in the morning. Your book is just marvelous because there are so many different aspects. Even though the name is Mindful Masculinity, I think the description that the publisher had sent me or the promoter had sent me was really very apropos because it talks about men themselves and understanding themselves better and loving themselves more, and the women that love them. Because we often get left out. You know, it's either all about the women or all about the men. Here, you're taking a look at why should a man actually be okay with loving himself and especially the female parts? Can you share a little bit about that?
I would love to. So, as you said, we have the left side, linear, rational, intellectual, and we have the right side of the brain. And the right side of the brain is the feminine part, the yin, receptive, intuitive, psychic. And the right side of the brain receives information, doesn't effort. but actually is the absence of effort. It's inspired rather than perspired.
Okay, agreed.
So a man, or a woman for that matter, who operates primarily from the left side of the brain is in constant effort and very often constant struggle, because the
Sure.
right side of the brain is there to support and sometimes even lead our lives. So the more we can access our intuitive feminine side, the more we can have grace in our lives without changing your name like I did. So let's see if I can remember this point. Oh, yes, it's in the book. Men who are scared of the right side of the brain, which means afraid of feelings, vulnerability, intuition, letting go of control, uh, surrendering, being humbled, all of that is the right side of the brain. Men who are scared of the right side of the brain actually can benefit masculine wise. In other words, the masculine is strengthened every time you demonstrate courage. Every time you take a risk, every time you move into new territory, you strengthen the masculine, the warrior, the adventurer. And right now in our history, the part of the world, the part of the universe that in Star Trek we would say, um, to go where no man has gone before. You know, the bold exploration of outer space is now inner space. And when you go to the right side of the brain and start exploring and making room for feelings and intuition and vulnerability and all the things that the feminine has to offer, you are expressing courage as a man to go where no man has gone before.
I
So
love that.
you become a real man, you become more courageous as you explore the right side of the brain. And no,
All
it's not going to make you a wimp. And no, it's not going to take you over. You already have your left brain. It's already been developed by the educational systems of our cultures.
right.
So it's new territory and it'll make you a better person.
All right. So that kept in mind, you brought up the word limp. Now, I know that you had experiences as a child, and I know many boys that in kindergarten or in preschool, before they even got really into primary school, were harassed if they tapped into their creativity, if they tapped into that right side of the brain. Now, you have men that have worked their entire life to be staunch, to be difficult, to be firm because it's masculine. How do you convey to them their ability to shift?
I try not to. Um, I,
Okay.
I I wrote the book, and uh, if life happens, then eventually it's going to bring you to your knees through disappointment, hurt, failure, heartbreak, divorce, bankruptcy. And those are the stimulators that would put a man in the position of asking for help. And that is the beginning of the journey of saying, I can't do this with my own strength. I can't do this with my will. I can't pretend anymore that everything's fine, because that's the way men are raised, is to, be okay with anything. And the, eventually things don't work out. And the pain of authentic heartbreak will bring a man to that book or to my coaching practice. And I don't need to convince him about anything. I don't need to sell him on the virtue of tears or getting vulnerable, getting real. I don't do that. I just work with people who have been humbled enough that they recognize the value already.
And what if someone reads your book and says, well, I really got a lot out of it, but this whole self under construction expect delays. How many delays am I supposed to expect?
Well, Haley, I'm glad you asked. I think I would say to a man like that, come here, give me a hug. Tell me about your challenges and let's connect, because it's a question that can't be answered. It's a question that comes from the desire to stay in control, and I can't really do anything with that. I don't want to relate to that. I would say, what's hurting you, and how can I help?
Okay. Because again, experience has shown that there are a lot of men that say, well, if I'm going to make this transformation, and there are women as well that feel this way, I need a time period. I need a deadline. And, throughout the book, you give amazing tools for people to become emotionally available. You get them, I love this sentence, this title, Get Naked with Clothes On. That's so perfect because you're saying, reveal yourself, be vulnerable. Throughout the book, you make references. And I really enjoy the fact that you're not afraid to talk about the grief either, because I feel that we have to, like you, get to a point where we just can't do it anymore. We have to surrender. And what's really fascinating is throughout all of your work, whether you are on your YouTube channel doing your little ditty for Dr. Seuss, or you're on stage, or you're writing, the few things that I have covered when I was investigating, because I don't let anybody on until I've checked them out, they all come back to be who you are, but be the best that you can be. You just don't phrase it that way.
Hmm.
So I like that there's that corollary from one to the next to the next. And you're not insulting anybody's sense of self. If anything, you're enhancing their sense of self.
Hmm.
And your book, Mindful Masculinity, I also like really and truly because a woman can read this and feel comfortable. Not to mention the fact a woman over a certain age doesn't need to wear glasses when she's reading the book. The font is a nice size. I have a feeling that was done intentionally.
Yeah, there's been enough women who've reviewed the book that I'm thinking of changing the subtitle to a book for women and the men who want to keep them.
Actually, like that. So not that I don't like this, but I like that as well. Okay, a real quick question
Yay.
is, as people listen in, I'd like them to have the opportunity to check you out. Now, you have your YouTube station, and I know that's helped you kind of go viral. And that's a little bit of comedy, a little bit of sincerity, but definitely a lot of messages in everything that you do. You have your book, you have the other books. Where is the best place for somebody to go to connect with you and your material?
The Internal Revenue Service has an office in Washington, D.C. No, scottsongs.com, www.scottsongs.com, SCOTTSONGS.com. They could just scroll down the homepage. They can click on the books. They could subscribe and stay connected to my world. And
Okay, perfect. Now that you brought up scottsongs.com, I would like to share with everybody that you can create a song on the spot, and you have. I'm going
thousands of times.
to put you on the spot. What sort of song, a little ditty, can you come up with that has to do with this evening and your book and our meeting?
Oh, okay. Well, let me get my guitar. I'll be right back.
Okay, well, Scott's getting his guitar. I wanted this to be fun because he's such a fun individual, and I think you'll enjoy whatever he comes up with. And this was not pre-planned, just so that you know.
So, Haley, the more specific we can get, the more fun it will be. So, rather than an all-purpose song about what we've been talking about, can you narrow it down to something that's more
Sure.
detail oriented?
I can narrow it down to anyone who's feeling uncomfortable in their own skin can read Mindful Masculinity, both men and women, and gain something from it.
So you want me to like sing a commercial for my book?
There you go.
All right. I feel deep within that if you're not comfy in your skin, your frown can turn to a grin by reading my book, taking a look, taking a flashlight into your soul, seeing the ways you're hanging on to control, gently letting go of everything you think you know, starting with beginner's mind, turning water into wine, finding out you are divine by listening to your pain, shining light on your fear and shame, taking away the self-blame, finding out you're innocent, precious as can be, no matter your history, you've got a great destiny.
Hey, isn't that awesome? That could be your new jingle for your book.
It's a long one.
It's okay. I like it.
Narrow it down. But yahoo! Thanks for bringing out the guitar.
Yes, absolutely. Now, tell us if you wanted to really get somebody's attention who was giving you agita. They're like, everybody keeps telling me, Scott, you're really great. Your book's really great. I thumbed through it, but I didn't know about this whole idea of changing. Like, my life is fine. I've got a business, I've got a family. Um, I know my wife wants me to give her more attention, but I'm busy. How would you address that?
I would say, come back in 10 years. We'll talk again. But for the purpose of this podcast, and since you asked me the question, let's see. How would I address that? I would say to this person, this man probably, dude, you can continue on your path, but I want you to take a snapshot of your potential future. If and when your wife's discontent turns into divorce court, if or when your successful business dries up, do you have the inner resources to adapt to that level of change? And if not, if you can foresee in your crystal balls that change will happen and your external success crumbling might just humble you to the point where you reach out for help, why not start now? Why not start? Because I can guarantee you change will happen. And your ego will interpret it as failure, as terrible things about you. Because there's no way you can go through life without having shit happen.
I was going to say shift, but yes.
That works. If you like, for the purpose of the recording, we can edit that out and say shift.
They could handle that. All kidding aside, you are really a compendium of information, and I'm hopeful that you will make a companion book or perhaps a workbook to mindful masculinity, because I think you could really serve so many people. The book itself is a valuable resource. The fact that you show people they have to connect with that inner knowledge and show people that they are connected to the divine, whatever the name is that they refer to it as. This helps, I'm going to say, solidify what spiritual teachers and metaphysicians and philosophers have been sharing for centuries. And it's in a book that's fun to read, really and truly. So again, we're going to give out your website. It's Scott's Songs.
Oh,
Or
actually, it's Scott Songs,
sorry, I said that
SCOTTSONGS.
correctly.
Yeah,
Okay, so SCOTTSONGS.com. Yes.
correct.
Okay, just making sure I'm doing that correctly.
Because the internet is unforgiving.
If somebody types in accidentally in Google Scots versus Scott, will Scott come up?
No,
You don't know.
I don't know.
Okay. If you had just one thing to share about your book, the most important thing, what would that be?
We got to
Yes.
screen the questions better. I don't know. My mind's a blank. I would say there's a chapter about men's addiction to not feeling fear. And I would say that that may be the most important chapter, because until a man can admit to himself and to the universe and to others how afraid, what's the platform, what's the foundation in which all of our desires, dreams, and addictions arise. And if we can really be honest and say, you know what, it's fear that I'm not enough, fear that if I don't accomplish, I won't be lovable. If you can really be okay with how much fear is running your nervous system and your to-do list, or at least be honest about it, then the journey begins. The healing begins. So I would say that's probably the most important part of the book. It's the beginning of a chapter called a section with a lot of M's. It's, I think, number 5.
Trying to find it,
becoming mindful.
Or was it?
Well, yeah, Haley, it's like section number. I have
You probably have
massive masculine migration from something to mindfulness. And
just when I was looking at it earlier, I came across it again, and now, of course, I can't find it.
That's all right.
I bookmarked several things, and of course, I didn't bookmark that one.
So it's a section in the book where each chapter is based on a certain emotion. There's joy, there's grief, there's fear, and there's anger. And it's what men need to learn about these 4 basic food groups.
Right.
That everybody carries. Yeah.
Because
and I would say, getting in touch with your feelings and being okay with all of them, especially fear.
Especially fear. Okay. Because we know that men compartmentalize.
Bingo.
And the idea is not to leave that box open. Don't put everything in there. Don't stuff everything in there. And as to the question, when you said about, preparing better, screening better, the reason my questions are kind of abstract is because I like to see how you're going to respond.
I like it. I really do like it. And it throws me off balance for a moment, but then like something comes out of me and I'm as surprised as you are what comes out. So these are professional questions from a professional interviewer. Don't try this at home, kids.
Exactly. I'm going to go back to the intuition for a moment. It's funny you mentioned about studying, and I did read that somewhere in my research there. And I giggled because of the fact that so much of what you've shared over the years, and I believe a big part of your book also, just came through you. Even though you've studied, even though you have context and content from all of the lessons and training, I feel like we revert back to that right hemisphere. We revert back to that part of us that inspires us. And oftentimes, when you start to write words, those words change before they've ever hit the book. I am so happy you could join me this evening. Once again, I'm going to give Scott's website, which is scottsongs.com, and that is SCOTTSONGS.com. Thank you so much for being here this evening. It really was a delight, and I hope I didn't throw you off too much. I just like to have fun.
I love having fun.
And I'm going to show your book one more time before we leave for this evening. It is backwards. Shouldn't be backwards, but it is. Mind, masculinity,